famous author David Montgomery says that there have been two important revolutions in the world. The first one was when we realized where we are, and that is not the center of the universe, but on a tiny planet revolving around a minor star. And it changed everything, because our worldview was that we were God's only children, the only place on earth. And the second one he considers to be as important, as revolutionary, as profound as the first one, which is what we're learning about the microbiome, the soil and the gut. And it's estimated that you have 30 trillion cells in your body, but less than a third are human cells. Somewhere between 70 and 90% of all the cells in your body are bacterial and fungal. So you are the hotel and the stay, but you're laden with guests who populate your body and control it to the point of making available the food that you have, creating healthy secretions in your body that are 70% of your immune system, modulating your digestion, changing your mood, making you healthy, keeping you healthy, more reactions than we can ever know, controlled by bacteria. And in terms of the DNA in your body, 90% of it is bacterial and fungal, and only 10% of the DNA is human. So this diagram is the bacteria, this is the cells count, this is the DNA count, this is the bacteria in green, this is the human DNA in orange. So this slide shows it. We're closely related to corn and other bacteria than we are the rest of the bacterial world. Humanity is just a speck in a massively bacterial world. We need to get used to that. With the tree of life, humans are far closer to corn than two common bacteria are to each other. So this is a revolution, because we don't understand how broad this field is and how much of life is here. So, as an illustration, there's a guy named Ron Helland in Fresno, California, who made a living creating vibrant compost to turn a desert, hot desert in San Joaquin Valley into someplace that could support great green grass. Because there is no grass that's over 100 degrees for 3.5 months, 4 months every year, all year, with brilliant sunshine. And so he started creating plain fields and making a living making vibrant compost. So the weather forced him to leave some of his special soil in an asphalt parking lot for 6 months. When he returned, the compost had eaten the asphalt. Now you understand that asphalt is an oil, it's a petroleum product, and somewhere in the DNA wisdom of the bacteria was an enzyme that then was shared by horizontal gene transfer, because there's 3 ways I can share a gene with Katie if I'm a bacteria. I can let it crawl between our bodies, I can inject it as a virus, and I can create a tube between us that actually shares cytoplasm. So if I touch bacteria, we're now brothers and sisters instead of separate. Horizontal, we have vertical gene transfer. And once we get our gene transfer, that's all we get for our lifetime. Bacteria can change it every 20 minutes. And so somewhere in that hot compost pile with all those critters together was a memory of a chemical pathway that was able to metabolize asphalt. And they ate the asphalt and all was left was rocks. But this guy's pretty smart. He was actually into DNA analysis 20 years ago when it was really expensive, working with the University of California. So he found there's 5,600 species. He separated them into 12 strains that he maintains as separate. And then he remixes them. The 30 of the species were unknown to science. 5 had DNA so strange they can't be classified at all. What planet are these critters from? So he mixed up a mix of those strains, and then added it to water. He sells 10,000-gallon tanker trucks full of his spray. And they did a test to see which product could keep strawberry plants alive. In the desert, nematodes eat every root they can find. And there's nothing, they can't grow strawberries there without fungicide. And one of the things they do is tarp the entire field and put a gas down that kills everything in the soil, sterilizes the soil. That kills the nematodes, they rot and die, the plants eat that dead stuff, and there's a temporary burst of life, and then they try and grow the plants. They do that 6 times a season. They race to the bottom, eating all the soil. But they did a test with 1,000 strawberry plants. Syngenta and Monsanto lost 600 out of 1,000, Ron lost 60. So he now sells this, and what happens, something in the mixture created an endophyte that transferred to the strawberries a systemic immunity to eat nematodes that used to kill the untreated plants. So there's a critter in that juice that goes into the strawberry roots and makes them unpalatable to the nematodes. So horizontal trees transfer in millions of years. We're finding that the impossible just takes a little longer. And we're starting to use NI, not AI, NI, to ask and answer questions we once thought were impossible. For example, there's now a 90% cure for Crohn's disease using a fecal transplant. From a healthy person, they just take some poop, put it in sterile water, and give an enema, and that rebalances the gut microbiome, and suddenly they don't have Crohn's disease anymore. Also, right now, chronic neuralgia is also finding to be a curable disease with this kind of therapy. So, another one that's really scary, 30 years ago, Ben Campbell discovered a photosynthetic bacteria. He found out that there was more going on than chlorophyll. That in the soil there were bacteria that feed on ultraviolet rays and heat rays and metabolize the soil. They take the carbohydrates in the soil and crack them, turn the carbon into humus, take the hydrogen and oxygen and turn them into water where there was no water. This stuff continues once you put it in the soil, and it can make fields grow. In Saudi Arabia, they're putting humus soil on the desert and planting wheat, and it grows immediately. So they created a process called groundswell. Instead of composting, bacteria eat these feedstocks. Got to be a special kind of feedstock. Got to be a certain kind of moisture. When they eat it, they respire it. 65% of the compost pile goes up as carbon dioxide, global warming gas. Humus soil, 100% of the feedstock stays under a tarp at 70% moisture and kind of ferments or pickles. So what's happening? Humus soil, 36 countries worldwide, creates an archival microbiome in the soil that mirrors the conditions before the first tilling, before white men came. In Texas, after 3 years, they're seeing plants come up that haven't been seen in 200 years. Which means it's able to recreate the whole operating system in the soil. And it's like the A-team. Suddenly we have critters that can do a great job for us. And they make water where there is no water. So it's a soil restoration technology. It's environmental protection technology. It's capable of treating brownfields and metabolizing those poisons and things and turning them around. a farm feed technology. Reduces bird stress. It's an organic feed. Animals need 10% less food because they're satisfied with the complete nutrition from the organic food. Reduces organ inputs. The first biotechnology available removes common industrial residues from the surfaces. No toxic chemicals. Carbon capture technology sequesters billions of tons of carbon emissions at an accelerated pace with unique bacterial process. Even organic matter that's rotting outside in the air is all going to be respired as carbon. And that's the way it's been working, but if we put it all back in the carbon in the air now, it will be a burden that we have to take care of. This material sequesters it under the tarp and then puts it in the soil and it starts sequestering more. So it's a big climate future. Drought buffering technology is the first technology guaranteed to protect soils against drought events using a proven patented water production process, hydrosynthesis, that creates an old soil water, even times of zero rainfall, and food security because it doesn't depend on the weather anymore. So what happens is the inoculant, you get the material, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be all wood. It could be wood and dead animals. It could be bedding from chicken factories. It could be any kind of biomass in any kind of ratio because we're going to treat it fungally. And underneath this tarp, it's 70% moisture and there's circulation. So methane, carbon dioxide are taken in, humic acid is created, and water is created. So this is like, what? Amazingly different kind of thing. When it's spread like a fertilizer over degraded soil, it reinvigorates the soil. Bacterial photosynthesis continues under the ground, stimulated by the live bacteria in the soil, continuously creates water and nutrients. So those are two of the amazing kinds of things that are happening as we understand more about the microbiology of the soil and the microecology. Only about 30 years ago, we discovered that plants feed the bacteria around them by putting sugars out through the roots. Up to 50%, 70% of the sugars that plants make are exuded into the soil. Plants let fungi crawl into their bodies. It's been said that in a root of a plant there may be as many as 50 different families of bacteria and fungi living in the roots. Earthworm, protozoa, and all manner of multicellular animals are attracted to feed on those bacteria that are around the plant. That forms a rhizosheath, a sheath of organic matter that is a protection from other plants coming in, other fungi coming in. It's also the food bank. It's the telecommunications hub. These plants have everything they need right around them. Over time, more soil life means more organic matter sequestered, deep rainfall, fewer plant diseases, larger soil particles which allow exchange of gases. Our compacted soils don't breathe, and less carbon dioxide in the air. So this is a picture of a naked root spitting out exudates. There's no sugar underground until this. And when that happens, bacterial explosion, predators, belch, poop, and fart, nitrogen made at the root tip. Plants get to make their own fertilizer when they want it, and they send out signals. We need a little more potassium. The fungi get the notice. They go out, grab some more rocks, crack them, bring back the potassium, and get the sugar they need to grow. Crazy. So there's a famous lady named Elaine Ingham who has 23,000 consultants around the world that test compost and make compost that's heavy in protozoa, bacteria, fungi, and root-feeding nematodes. Those four groups mean that your soil is balanced. If you've got this in the compost, the juice you make, the compost tea, will create a functioning ecosystem in the soil. So she's made a living creating a system that analyzes soils, intensive cover crop, and biological farming. We realize now no bare soil, at no time, no-till planting, perennial crops, big deep roots, constant cover, mob grazing, cows, sheep, hogs, and chickens. Like the old buffalo and the wolves, right? The wolves chased the buffalo, kept them in a tight bunch, stomped it down, ate it up. And when the grasses were this tall, the roots were that deep. When you cut the grasses down to this tall, the roots have to die back. And that causes the rotten root organic matter to suddenly be a pathway, a tunnel of sweet, rotten material in the soil that then can penetrate when the roots pulse back. It's called pulsing, root pulsing. So, also huge carbon sequestration. The glacier only retreated 15,000 years ago. And all the topsoil that's here, that made this the breadbasket of the world, came because of wolves and buffalo in those 15,000 years. So we start to plant roots for radishes that go down, called the ground hog. And when he dies, you don't pull it up. When it dies, it rots, makes a funnel deep below the soil, pulls up the minerals, feeds the life in the soil. So this is a mob of sheep, cattle, and red deer in New Zealand. And they're under tight pressure. They talk about 1 million pounds of livestock per acre. To stomp it, eat it, crush it, and move twice a day.
Do you know where that photograph was taken?
Now, it's in New Zealand. There's an article in Acres USA magazine on the steel of things like that. This is also New Zealand soil. This is pumice soil. So you're familiar with pumice, like in lava soap. It's a volcanic, granular, white ash. But you see the rhizosheaths. You see the organic matter penetrating with the root, and the trace of the root and the organic matter around the root causes those trails. And that's deeply sequestered. If we don't till, that's going to be there a long time. We're learning about biochar. A living plant has cytoplasm in each of these holes. That's a cell. But it has a cell wall that's carbon, that's lignin and cellulose. And what we do is we bake that, drive off the cytoplasm, which is flammable, create this giant flame, and allow no oxygen to come in, and we end up baking this into black charcoal. This turns out to be a teaspoon of biochar has the surface area of a football field. So all those holes make it an adsorbent filter for water. Charcoal water filters. We have charcoal breathers for paint booths so people don't breathe the nasty stuff. But water, bacteria, this is the condo that they live in, and soluble nutrients like nitrogen are all concentrated by this. This is seemingly worth about 25% growth. And the good news about it is it has a half-life of 1,600 years. So it will be here a long time and working for us a long time. Greenhouses put 2 to 5% charcoal in their potting soils, and it really holds things. Our premium compost has 16% because we know we're going to dilute it into soil that has methane. So what we know is that plants came onto land as a result of population with fungi. A lichen is probably the very first thing that happened, and it's a symbiotic relation between algae and fungi. The algae are photosynthetic, they make the sugars, the fungi crack the rocks and get the minerals, and that partnership has continued to this day. And all the minerals, the phosphate, the zinc ions, and not just, see, they say that your soil test is not a good soil test because you scoop up this little surface around the top of the layer of the soil, and that's and those amount of minerals are one thing, but your root mass is huge, way down there, and then the fungal networks at the end of the root mass go out, and fungi can crack rocks, and they have bacteria that do it, create the acids, that crack the rocks, and make the minerals in your soil bioavailable. And what we do, kill fungi with herbicides and tilling. So our soils are terribly deficient in fungal growth. That's why We allow our compost to cure for 6 months because fungi start to come in. If you get a bag of our green frontier compost, there are mushrooms growing inside of it. So this is the deal. Once it's colonized, increased resistance, increased drought tolerance, increased salt tolerance, I don't know what that is. Nutrient transfer as a result, water, nitrogen, and then without it, you're in trouble. And see, building a root is like building I-70. It's a big endeavor. But building a fungal network is only one cell wide. So you can easily let the fungi do the work for you. This fungal network is up to 300 times bigger root scavenging than the roots can actually do. These are rhizosheaths. They call it roster roots. No, this is the sticky, mucus-laden glue around the roots of plants. What we know now is that plants are not plants. Plants have other critters living in them and on them, just like us. But fungi and bacteria, common in all plants, intracellular and intercellular in the plant, improves plant stress, suppress pathogenic fungi, modulate root development, improve nutrient absorption. A famous guy named John Kemp says the most important thing I can do is make sure that when the seed sprouts, that first little cotyledon that pops out gets inoculated with the fungi and bacteria of its beneficial friends. It's like coming through the birth canal and getting your mother's microbiome from natural birth, and it's why cesarean section kids have immune problems. It's the deal. You've got to start to re-inoculate yourself with the full microbiome. Who are the healthiest kids in the world? Bavarian children who live above the cows in their house. Right? Because they get all the dust, they're walking barefoot into the county where they're fully inoculated in their world. And what do? We want to we want to sterilize our thing. There's a deal between sterilization and sanitization. Sanitize means knock back 80-90% of the bugs. Sterilize means try to kill them all. So, James White found out we now have color electron microscope video. Never had that before. But we're able to look at roots and watch what's actually happening. And he's discovered rhizophagy, which is root feeding. Roots literally suck in bacteria, strip off their cell walls and part of their cytoplasm, feed on that, and shoot them back out the tips of the roots to get into that root zone again, grow again. And they're sitting there, cycling, eating the roots carnivorously, where we thought they were passive. The answer is no, they're not passive. They're eating the critters around them. So, plant cell wall endocytosis, organic acids and hypothesis. If we stain it, you can literally see the video of it. This is this still. Okay, I got it wrong. They go in the tip, they're stripped off. They use a strong nitrogen oxide. Nitrogen oxide is what's in the back of our throats that kills the bugs in our throats, produced by our nasal cavities. You breathe through your nose. There are nitrogen producing cells in our nose that will kill bacteria here. It's a whole thing. Anyway, the microbes recharge with nutrients in the rhizosphere and re-enter. So, this is the horse and buggy days. We have no idea what's going to come around next, but we do know that living holistically, living with our symbionts is the answer to full health, because that's all we ever had before. And raging good health. If we made it through our infancy and didn't get killed on the job in the 1800s, you could live to be 90, 95. My grandparents My father lived to be 99, my mother lived to be 94. They were fully inoculated in their organic gardening family. We could be too, if we worked with the alchemy of composting and all those other gifts. I'm not excited about this or nothing, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.